Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. Thanks for the nice introduction. This talk is called The Writing Life. You call this living. And just a quick example of what it's like to be a semi-famous writer. Before I came here today, I was fixing a toilet. So the glamour never lets up. I'm well equipped to talk about the writing life because I've been a work-at-home writer for 20 years now. I teach part-time in the Honors College at UNM, but mostly I'm still a full-time writer. I started trying to write fiction 30 years ago, and as Rob said, my 30th book, Side Eye, it just came out. So I guess that's some kind of a schedule. You do the math. 30 books in 30 years. They didn't come out that evenly, but that's the way, that's the way it adds up. Briefly, this new book, which is available right over here, for only $10. It's about an 18-year-old kid who comes right out of juvenile detention here in Albuquerque and walks into a job as an arranged job as a driver for an old loan shark who's losing his eyesight. He can't drive himself around anymore. And it turns out he's used to be in the Dixie Mafia in the South, which is, and his past comes back, and this kid gets caught in the middle. And it's a smart little thriller, snappy little thriller. It's only like 206 pages, and it took me a year to write it and rewrite it. You never know. Okay, so I've been a writer all this time, and I just like to say it has not been an easy road. It's more like a thrill ride, really. Ups and downs, and the occasional loop-de-loop to keep it interesting. Through my career, I've been with 7 different publishers, 5 different agents. Fire 'em, fire 'em, fire 'em. That's my motto. I can't get along with anybody, turns out. There are times when I wonder why I persist, but I have a stubborn streak that overcomes everything else, and I think most writers who succeed have some sort of mechanism like that, some kind of I'll show you streak in their personality that just makes them keep writing against all odds. So what's it like to be a writer full-time? Well, it can be a joyous life, filled with self-discovery and fulfillment and sweatpants. But it can also be a lonely life, assaulted by crushing disappointments and setbacks of all kinds, mostly in the business end of it. The publishing industry is a lunatic asylum in a maze, aboard a sinking ship. Sorry about that many metaphors, but there it is. Thanks to self-publishing, it's never been easier to be published. It's never been harder to make a living as a writer than it is now. Nobody wants to pay for our words anymore. They think they come free on the internet. So why do we all want to be writers? Why do we torture ourselves this way? Almost anything is easier than writing. Part of it's the myth, though. Part of it's the myth of the writing life. This idea that you could be a full-time writer. Thanks to people like Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and J.D. Salinger, Americans have romantic notions about what it's like to be a writer. We picture a life of the mind, full of salons and deep conversations late at night with a lot of wine. Or we think of like Hemingway's kind of life, life filled with freedom to do the things that you wouldn't get to do otherwise, like go to bullfights or hunt big game or whatever. And this is increasingly the problem with the new writers, we picture fame and fortune. Becoming a rich celebrity who's such a celebrity we're really too busy to write at that point. Maybe best of all, we picture it as being like a hermit, some of us do anyway, like Salinger, just hidden from the world, pecking away, perfectly happy, not giving speeches on Saturdays in Albuquerque. The writing life, of course, isn't exactly like any of those things. Little bits of all of those things, but not really like any. Fame and fortune are hard to come by, especially fortune. Any time spent on bullfights or big game hunting, it's probably time you should be promoting your book on Kindle. There is a sort of minor celebrity that comes with being an author, but most people will never hear of you. And that's a harder thing to choke down when you're, elbow deep in a manuscript that won't cooperate. But it's true. Most people never. I've been doing this 30 years, 30 books. I can walk down the street, nobody recognizes me. It's fine with me. There aren't any groupies. 30 years, not a single groupie. If you're seeking fame and fortune and groupies, you should learn to play the guitar, not the typewriter. Writing life does have its advantages. All the things you hate about your day job, poof, gone. Dress codes, meetings, schedules, customers, your cubicle, your boss, all gone. You don't have any of those things. Well, and your paycheck. Yes, right. Yeah, and your paycheck. And your benefits. And your, yes. Well played. There are times when you have to go out in the world like this. You have to put on long pants, autograph your latest book or whatever. But mostly, you're at home talking to yourself every day. Some of the benefits. When you work at home, every day is casual Friday. I haven't worn a necktie since I left the Albuquerque Journal 20 years ago. Most days, I dress like a castaway. Sandals, cargo shorts, old t-shirt, volleyball with a face drawn on it for company. If it's cold weather, I'll add sweatpants to the mix, because everyone looks good in sweatpants, always, ever. I don't wear them to the supermarket, I'll give you that. Because my mother, who's not dead yet, would roll over in her grave. When you're a writer, you can tend to things at home while you're working. You can do the laundry, other chores like that. Some of my best ideas have come while vacuuming. Because you can't play music or be distracted, just pretty soon you're thinking about your book. And that same spot's been vacuumed 35 times. If you're writing fiction like I do, this is a memoir, but bear with me. If you're writing fiction like I do, most of your time is spent with your imaginary friends. They don't mind if you're a little distracted while you're vacuuming. They'll play along, unlike real people. You never have to leave your house anymore to be a writer. You email and Skype and Facebook and make it possible to meet, with editors and publishers and readers. You don't even have to wear pants, much less leave the house. Of course, if you got dogs barking in the background of your Skype and children wailing, and they might not take you seriously as a professional. Also, if you forget and stand up while you're not wearing pants, they'll notice. They'll notice. Not that I've ever done that. Speaking of dogs, every writer should have a pet. That way, when family members catch you talking to yourself, you can say, no, I'm not crazy. I was talking to the dog. I recommend, however, that you skip having children if it's not too late. Just skip that. They're not good for your career. They take up all kinds of money that you don't have. And all your attention Also, they have this ability to make time speed up. So this 20 years just goes by in a flash. They're all grown up, and you don't know what happened to your life. And so you know your nest is empty. You're too tired to pick up a pencil and write down anything after all of that. But it's extremely important to have a supportive spouse, one who has a real job and health insurance. Because you don't have those when you're a writer. You don't have any of that. It's also extremely important to keep that spouse happy. When they come home from a hard day at the job, they don't want to hear about how you were putting around the house in your bathrobe all day, thinking of stuff. The problem with writing is that it so often looks like loafing. You know, I'm really good at both things, so I can tell I've got like a crossover, CrossFit, loafer, writer. Tony Hillerman always said the hardest part of his job was convincing his wife Marie that he was working when he was lying on the sofa. How many of you still have a day job of some sort? Hands? A few? Well, I'm sorry. That makes it extra hard to write books. It is. I wrote fiction before work and on weekends for 10 years while I was working at the Albuquerque Journal the whole 10 years. That meant getting up around 4 a.m., writing for a couple of hours, and getting my kids up, getting them off to school, then going out to the Albuquerque Journal and giving them whatever I had left for 8 hours every day. I was young then. Well, I was younger. I was in my 30s. I couldn't do that now, for sure. But whether you're full-time or part-time or whatever, finding the time to write and preserving the time to write is always the chore. There are demands of career and community and family and those damn children that won't go away. And preserving your writing time will always be your main problem. Life intrudes. And when it does, it catches you talking to the dog. It's a little different for people who write memoirs like you guys. You're mining your own memory for experiences that will add up to a good story. So when you're staring into space, you're probably like remembering stuff rather than dreaming stuff up. And we all know what a minefield that can be. Remembering. You know, you remember that one time that you lied to your mom. And you think about how she'd react if she saw that on print now, all these years later. And all that old guilt comes rolling over you, and you feel so bad. And it's just a good thing you don't live in a high-rise with ledges. Sometimes it feels that way when you're writing fiction, too. It's like killing myself would be easier than fixing this stupid manuscript. And it would be easier, but that's the coward's way out. That's not on my script here. I just thought I'd mention it. Suicide. It's always a funny topic. It always just brings people to their feet when you mention that. Killing yourself. Okay, fiction, nonfiction, memoir, whatever you do, it starts with an idea. Some way to frame the issues or to tell the story from the beginning to the end, right? You must stay plugged in to whatever keeps you producing new ideas. If that's yoga, great. If that's staring into space, super. If it's vacuuming or mopping the kitchen or watching soap operas, whatever it is that makes your brain get up and go, you got to do that regularly. You've got to give yourself time and space to worry at things, to solve these problems. Most of writing, any kind of writing, is solving problems, making choices. Do I come in here or do I come in there? Do I start the scene here? Do I stop it there? All of these things, everything is a decision. Do I use this word or that word? This sentence or that one? It's all just decision making all damn day. with, I'm completely off my script now. Maybe I should go look at it. Oh, I was talking about ideas. Thank you. Yes, I was talking about ideas. Every author and there's a few here, every author who's ever done a book signing has heard that question. For someone in the audience, assuming there is an audience, someone will say, where do you get your ideas? And the truth is that most writers are just overflowing with ideas. The ideas are not the problem. It's more a matter of selection. Which ideas are the ones that are worth pursuing? Which will make the best books. With memoir, as Shirley said a minute ago, you're not writing a whole autobiography. You're trying to tell a story. And so you got to, which parts of your life will make the most satisfying story for the reader. I mean, it's great that you get catharsis out of it in the writing process, but we should always be thinking about the reader. What's the experience they're going to get out of it? What makes it worth their time? So, ideas haven't been a problem until recently, and I'm getting older, so maybe that's it. But usually, when I'm finishing up a book, doing the rewrites and all of that, I'm already thinking about the next book. This has been my pattern for 30 years. And by the time that I'm finally finished with all the rewrites and have sent this thing off to its editor or the publisher or whatever, I'm ready. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm ready to go on that next book. Well, it ain't that way anymore. It's changed recently. I had a couple of years where I was writing 2 books a year. And it turns out that's too many. That's too fast. I found myself sort of drained. And I was teaching too. I teach 1 or 2 classes a semester at UNM. I just felt depleted, and these gaps started appearing between projects. The last couple of 3 books that I've done, I would like finish a book. I have no idea what I was going to do next, it felt wrong at every level, but still, I had to sort through it. I worked on side-eye for a year. I wrote this book. This is a writer's life story for you. I wrote this book in 1 month. It's a short book, but I wrote it in 1 month. And then I spent 10 months fixing it. I wish that were an exaggeration, but that's the way these things go sometimes. So I wrote a book in a month. It took me a year to bring it to print because it needed a lot of fixing. So even with all of that time passing, I had nothing. 2 weeks ago, I had nothing. I had no idea what I was writing. I was on empty, I even gave a serious thought to hanging it up. I talked to my wife about it. I'm 60 years old. I just recently turned 60. Why am I hurting myself like this, writing these books? They don't sell that well. New York, I've just given up on New York and agents and those guys. To hell with them. They can't sell books any better than I can do it myself, which turns out to be not very well, but neither can they, so why give them a cut, The ever-shrinking publishing industry has just drives you crazy. And self-publishing is hard, and writing any kind of book is hard. It's a commitment of months or years to a single story or a memoir or whatever. There are times in the process where you feel like banging your head on your desk. Often. Not quite daily, but often. So I keep subjecting myself to that. Almost everything is easy. Writing, why not do something else? I'm teaching more. I really love that. I had all these round numbers. That didn't help. All these round numbers at once. I turned 60. Book number 30 came out. I've been writing fiction for 30 years. I've been out of the journalism business for 20 years. I've got this body of work. One that'll live on after I'm gone, at least for a little while. especially if I drop dead up here any minute. You'll still be able to buy them right over here. I could write a few short stories every year, you know, manage my backlist, keep my hand in, but focus on teaching, you know, and taking it easy and not working so hard all the time. And then what happened? I got an idea. I was reading the Albuquerque Journal like I do every day. There's a lot of good ideas to be had in there. Not much good writing, but a lot of good ideas. And there was a story there about Mexican bologna. Has anybody else heard about Mexican bologna? It's a thing. Larry's eating it right there, back there right now. Mexican bologna, it's a thing. And it's illegal in the United States because they don't process their porks the way we do, and they could have diseases, and it's full of fat, etc. So naturally people smuggle it in. Bologna smuggling. This is just the kind of like low rent, stupid crime that I love the most. I can have so much fun with bologna smuggling. I can hardly wait now to start writing it. Their bologna is different from ours. I think it's a Chimax or Chimax, something like that. Comes in a big roll, just like regular bologna. Yeah, but when you slice it open, inside it looks more like summer sausage. Little globs of fat, and it's kind of darker. It tastes more like bacon than sausage. But if you grew up eating that stuff, you have a nostalgia thing going on. You must have it. You will pay 6 times, 10 times what you pay for in Mexico to some idiot who smuggled it across the border. And it turns out that if they bust you, baloney smuggler that you are, there's almost never any jail time.
Is this where the building wall concept came from?
I believe these rolls of bologna would push right through that fence without a problem. All right, so if you get caught, they confiscate the bologna, which I'm sure they take home and eat themselves, and they fine you like $1,000. But they don't jail you. And so the kind of low-rent, dummy criminal that I like to write about, this is perfect in every way. You know, it's like an income stream for them. So now I find myself researching Mexican bologna. And thinking way too much about Mexican bologna and the people who smuggle it. There's some kind of a story there. I don't know what it is yet, but there's some kind of a story there, and it's kind of comic, crime caper, you know, just my cup of bologna. So pretty soon I'll be talking to my imaginary friends, and lumbering around the house, swinging my arms while I choreograph fight scenes, as you do. So I'm not retired yet. I guess I found the strength to carry on through book 31, and it's all thanks to Mexican blood. I'm going to wrap up now and take a lot of questions, I hope. So here's what I wish for you as writers. I wish that you find a storyline or a subject matter that grabs hold of your imagination and won't let go. I wish that you find a way to lead the writing life, however that might look for you. I wish sweatpants upon you. Most of all, I hope you find inspiration, your very own Mexican bologna. Thank you. Questions? Patricia?
Have you yet secured any of that, your very own loaf of that?
No, good God, no. I just make this stuff up. I don't actually.
You're not going to taste it?
I read a description of it. I might if I run across it, but we'll see. I don't leave the house. How would I come across Mexican bologna? Larry, okay, Larry's going to bring me some. Okay, good. We'll do that.
Okay, that begs the question then. How
Yes.
do you don't leave the house. How do you do your research? I mean, I know there's Google, but
Yes, there is Google.
is it just you and Google? How
Pretty much.
How do you
Pretty
do
much.
your research for your books?
Oh, everything starts at the computer these days because why not? But, so yeah, the first thing I did was get on Google and start reading news stories about Mexican bologna. Turns out it happens all the time. It's a regular news story. People get busted carrying hundreds of rolls of Mexican bologna hidden in their truck. Huh? Well, one guy said you could buy it for $6 in Juarez and sell it for $60 in Denver. That'll pay for your gas. Yeah. I think it's cheaper than that here. I think it's the further away you get from Mexico, the more you can charge, but, because, people in Las Cruces just run down and smuggle their own damn bologna. They don't have to pay you. So these are going to be Albuquerque crooks, I think, in my story. Yeah. Believe me, I thought of a drug connection right away, and then I thought, that's what everybody expects. And then I thought about something else hidden in the bologna, and I thought, well, that's what everybody expects. So I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I'm trying to find the one that no one expects. So we'll see. Yeah.
Do you plan out the story ahead of time, completely, pretty much?
Pretty much. I'm an outliner. I outline the plot. A lot of the character development, all the dialogue, all that stuff, that comes in the first draft. But I write out usually around 20 pages, typewritten pages. Chapter 1, it'll be a paragraph about what happens in chapter 1, chapter 2. But just the action, just so I know where the plot lines, where the plot points are, where the hot spots are, where the climaxes are and the mini climaxes in the story. You got to kind of have a good idea for that kind of stuff. For these kinds of stories, you can't meander. If you do meander, you end up cutting it all out later, which I prefer not to do. Yes, sure.
So Steve, are you looking for humor in the ideas that grab you? Like, we're all laughing at the idea of Mexican. So is that part of what grabs you?
Well, sure. In this particular case, yeah. I love to write something funny, and not always. This book here is not very well. It's kind of funny. It's got some funny stuff in it, but because I can't help myself, But naturally, the ideas that have some comic potential are the ones that are going to grab me the most, And so I go with that a lot. Yeah.
That makes me think of Elmore Leonard.
Yeah, my hero.
Is he one of your favorite writers?
Yeah.
And who are your favorite writers?
Oh, Elmore Leonard for sure, especially when he wrote dialogue. He was such a good writer of dialogue. Donald Westlake, who also wrote Richard Stark. I love both of those guys. I love Richard Stark's hard-boiled stuff, and I like Donald Westlake's comic mysteries. These guys are all dead now. All my heroes are dead.
That's a good name for a book.
All my heroes are dead. That'll be my next book, featuring Mexican bologna and anti-heroes. I like those guys. I like Ross Thomas. I'm just rereading Ross Thomas right now. If you've never read him, he's fantastic. And he died in '95, so his books are getting hard to find. Yeah, sure.
You mentioned Elmore Leonard, who is famous for saying, leave out the stuff from
Yeah.
your skin. So I was wondering, in your editing process, what are the kinds of things that you end up cutting out? Like you said, you wrote a book in a month, spent 9 months.
Yeah. Well, that particular case, there was a lot of additions and subtractions, and that's why it took so long. But mostly with me, it's about subtraction. On the editing, I want to take out any unnecessary words, any little dead-end paragraphs, anything really that takes you out of the story for a minute. So I'm ruthless when it comes to editing. You can ask some of my students. Reading everywhere, but I do the same thing to myself. I'm really a hard editor of myself, and so the books usually shrink in the rewrite process. Not a whole lot, but some. The best thing is to not write the stupidest stuff to begin with, so that you don't have to go back and fix it. But sometimes, sometimes stupid breaks out, and then you have to go. I wrote this book in a month. I should have gone a lot slower. Turns out, because there was stuff just missing. Just things I hadn't even thought of because I was going too fast. Yeah. Other questions? Anyone? Rob.
Why did you want to be a writer, Steve?
Indoor work, no heavy lifting. I I'm the son of a lumber mill worker and the grandson of a lumber mill worker, and no one in my family had ever gone to college before, till I did. And so words are my whole life. They're everything for me. Writing, reading, growing up in the library, a public library saved my life, you know. So, yeah, and as far as, I thought for a long time I just wanted to be a journalist. I was happy being a journalist till I got to be about 30. And then I started playing around fiction and it hooked me in. Yes?
I love what you're just saying about your life. Do you tie in a lot of nonfiction into the fiction? A lot of your true life character stuff into the fiction?
You know, sometimes. A lot of times what I put in is stuff that I've researched. It's not my life at all. Somebody else I read about or researched in some way. You know, and I'm stealing their lives. But once in a while, something from my own life does sort of pop up, and I'll give you an example right here from this book. When I was 17 years old, I was working in a head shop and / clothing store. It's called the Jean Joint. It's in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is where I grew up. If you can imagine a head shop in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, right? Didn't you wonder I write comedy, right? Okay, so I was working for the Jean Joint, and my boss, who was this old hippie named Drew, says, hey, come with me, I'm going to collect on a bad debt. And I'm like, okay. And so we jump in his van, naturally a van, and we drive to the worst neighborhood in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Scary, get your brain shot out kind of neighborhood. And he parks in front of this house. And he reaches under the seat and he pulls out a machete. And he hands it to me. And he says, you sit here in the van and hold this machete. I'm going to go knock on the door. If that guy comes out violent, you jump out and wave this machete around and scare him off back into the house. Now, I'm a tall guy, but I weighed about 12 and a half pounds back then. I was just big around. The machete had more heft than I did, you know. And I was just sitting there trembling in this van like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And of course, he goes up to the door, and the guy's mother or somebody comes to the door, and he's not here. And it turned out to be a big nothing, right? In terms of the story I could tell you just now. But in this book, there's a machete under the seat. And as you know, if you're going to put a machete under the seat early on, somebody's going to get hacked before that story's over. And yeah, that's what happens. So. Yeah, so that's one time, you know. There was another time when I was in college, I walked in on a supermarket robbery, a big holdup. And it's the only time that really big crime has ever touched me. We had our car stolen, but we didn't see it happen. We got it back. It wasn't a big deal, it just smelled like cigarette smoke. But when I walked into that supermarket when I was 22 years old, there was a guy with a gun like right here. And I'm like, that looks like a toy gun to me. That was the first thing that came to my brain. There were like these young guys, they were young ski mask guys holding up this supermarket, and I was like, I thought they were kids. My first split second thing was, oh look, it's a kid with a water gun. Oh my God, that's a real gun. Oh my God, it's a holdup. And now I'm on the floor. I was such a young journalist that as soon as these guys fled and the cops arrived, I was on a payphone calling the newsroom. Any chance we can get this in the last edition? There's a big holdup. No? Okay, shit, okay. I thought it was going to be my breakout, you know. I don't even know what the question was. Now I just got to tell the story. How are we doing on time, Rob?
We got a few more minutes.
A few more minutes, yes, sir.
I'd like to know why you left the Albuquerque Journal and deprived all of the intellectuals here in Albuquerque.
You remember a different Steve Brewer who worked at the Albuquerque Journal, I think. The one I remember was when he was just tired all the time. No, I love journalism, and for the longest time, well, all through my 20s, that's all I wanted to do. I was an award-winning journalist. I worked in big cities and small and covered some big stories that I won't bore you with now because it was 30 years ago. But I had a story on the front page of the New York Times. That doesn't happen very often. I was working for the AP. They hate to put AP stories on the front page. They want their own back. It was about the Cuban refugee riots at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas during the boat lift. See, no one remembers any of this now. But I was there. I was there. I survived it. My car got bashed up pretty bad, but I survived. But stuff like that, all that young journalist stuff, like you run right into the teeth of the whatever's happening, you know. And then as you get older, you just kind of stand back. You know, y'all run up there and see what that is. Send the photographers. They have to get close anyway, you know. Get them. You guys go up there and tell me what's going on. I'll be here behind this tree. There was a time when I was a young journalist, I tried to get up to a scene of a standoff. It was actually a great story because the police were in this huge standoff, and there was a fire truck there, and they couldn't get this guy to come out of the house. And it turns out he's deaf. He's deaf. And no one tells the police. You're yelling at a man who can't hear you. You're using a bullhorn. But of course, none of us knew that right away either. So I creep up to the scene, and I try to get closer so I can see. And I'm way past where the police have told us not to go, you know. And so I actually crawl under the fire truck, and I do that elbow soldier crawl thing that I couldn't do now in 100 years, but back then I was young. And I got up to the front of the fire truck, I'm right under the front of the fire truck bumper, watching everything. And then the fire truck started up. I'm not going to get shot to death, I'm going to get run over by a fire truck. That doesn't look good on your tombstone. These aren't questions anymore. I'm just telling stories. Now, somebody got another question?
Yeah, why did you quit though?
Why did I quit? Because I got to 40 years old, and I'd had a few books out by then. And I had a few books out. The book thing was starting to take off a little bit, and so my wife said, "Why don't you quit your job and work on books full time?" That's a lie. That's not what my wife said. And some of you have heard this before. What my wife said was, you should take a year off and just write books. Take like a leave of absence. Take a year off. And that's what I did. And I never went back. And that was 20 years ago. I found something I liked even better. That's what it amounted to. I liked all of this staying at home in your pajamas and making stuff up. You know, which...
Yeah, but you were such a good journalist, and I didn't even know you'd written any books until I saw the introduction to this.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people have this experience. They don't know. Millions of people actually don't know that I've written any books. It's, my career goal has always been obscurity. Yes, ma'am.
How did you manage to separate being a journalist from being a fiction novel writer?
You know, it's a big learning curve. It is, and it took me a while to get any good at it. I started trying to write fiction when I was 30. I think I was 37 by the time my book finally came out. Because I had written like 3 that went right in the trash. No, unfortunately, I showed them to people first. Then they went in the trash. If only I had known, you know. It's like, the people go, "This is terrible." And you go, oh. I'm so good at that journalism thing, too. I don't know how this is so terrible every time, but yeah, it's a big learning curve. You don't write dialogue when you're a journalist. You know, you quote people, you don't write dialogue. You don't have to worry about plot points and hitting the conflict at just the right moment and and 3-act structure and a hook and all these other things that are basics in writing fiction. And so I started from nothing. I've never taken a creative writing course yet. I probably should take one of those. You think it's too late? I got too many bad habits now. Huh? Yeah. Anyone else got a question? Well, it's been delightful being here with you. I'm going to hang around for a while. If you want to buy my books, and I'll autograph them for you. And thanks for having me. It was a pleasure as always.